So Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 is where we are. Now, I know it was 2 weeks ago, and Jordy just talked to you a little bit about that. And it really was Jesus telling a group of Jews, this is how you do it, but you won't do it. So you still have another chance. Follow me. And so we're in verse 13, where he goes on, and I'm afraid today could be a little rough for some people. And it ought to be pretty exciting for most of us. All of us should be shouting for joy at the end of this, because of what is facing us and what we have the freedom, and I'm telling you, freedom, to avoid if we want to.
Come on.
Okay? So, it goes like this. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life. And there are few who find it. Did you see what that said? There are few that find it. Now, we could have a discussion about 16 billion people that have lived on the earth. And if, quite a few million found it, that'd still be few, right? So I'm not making a value judgment about anybody else. I'm just saying it's few. It's not so easy and common. What does it say about that narrow way? And there are few who find it. And what about that other way? What does it lead to? Destruction. So there's this thing, many find it, and it's easy, and it leads to destruction. And then it leads to life. I ask all the time, is your life the best it's ever been? Who would say that? No, man, boom, you don't have to raise your hand, but holy moly. Some people don't even have to think about it. So if you come from a really bad place, it's pretty easy to see things are getting better. It's pretty easy, There was a story of Mark when he was a little guy. My septic system was put in poorly, and it leaked. And it was like quicksand around it. Think about that. Just give that a little word, a little mental picture there, right? Yeah. It's that word we used before. It was like quicksand. So Mark was walking. He was little. And I had to go down the hill, which didn't look like the hill. If you've been to my house, it didn't look anything like that, then. And I had to go down the hill, and I looked up, and there he was, sinking. It was quicksand, and he was sinking. And he's like... Luckily, he kept his hands up, because when I ran up the hill, I could reach over, get both hands, and I pulled him out. And if you ever seen that nursery rhyme about the person who put in their thumb and pulled out a plum... He looked like a head with a turd. Sorry. He's like a head with a turd. I mean, you couldn't find where Mark began and Mark stopped. It was hideous. It wasn't like a bunch of dirty clothes. It was a lump of turd. I mean, it was like... And I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'm carrying him. And I got the hose, I turn it on, and I'm spraying him with the hose. And when I get down to the bottom, I said, he came outside with no shoes on? Ziggy says, no, he had shoes on. And I went, we aren't going to go after those shoes. And we didn't have any difficulty telling that he stinks. This is not, he's filthy. And then when we took the hose, he was like, it's cold water, right? Spraying him with a hose. And he really didn't have any problem telling. He got clean. And so when we say, is your life the best it's ever been, a lot of people in this room I don't have any problem. I have this mental picture of, Mark is a plum and Mark is not a plum. And a lot of you have that too. Life was bad, now life is good. I can always answer that. Life was sad, now it's happy. Right. Life was miserable. I hated myself, now I don't. Still. So when you see wide and narrow, destruction and life, few and many. Most of you have a pretty good vantage point from which to see this, right? Very few people. I feel bad for those born in good places that everything looks good and yet it's not. That's the hardest place to come back from. It's pretty easy to find a little boy that looks like a turd, covered in poop, and help him get clean. That's easy. It's that way with life. It's pretty easy to find people behind the jail door and tell them they need help. It's pretty easy to find people who've lived some of the lives we've lived. But people who are raised in affluence or ease, this is a much more difficult concept to grasp onto.
Good.
What's hard is when somebody is, sinking in a quicksand of septic filth and you can't convince them that's septic filth. Don't you want help?
Wow.
Yeah. Can you wave your hand over me and make it better? No, man. You got to go through the process. You got to get clean. You got to walk. I was recently at a table with prayer, being the reason for the table. And the number one subject was, we are sorry for striving. And I'll just read you. I couldn't join the prayer. We are not sorry for striving. I'm going to go ahead and read you John chapter 10, verse 9, all right? Let's go ahead and put that on the screen. I probably should turn there. Sorry. Well, I'm on a camera, turning my back to it. 9, verse 10, I'm on the wrong page. Okay. So, 10, verse 9, sorry. It's chapter 10, verse 9. Is that correct? Okay. All right, I'm the one that didn't have it. Okay. I am the door, and Jesus is the one talking. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. Should I read that again? I am the door. And so we have this repeating idea that the way is narrow and the gate is narrow. And he calls it a gate in our scriptures today. But here in John remembers a time when Jesus called it a door and said, I'm the door. So when you enter by the narrow gate, it isn't anything but Jesus. The gate, the door, and there's another place where I'm not going to read to you today where he says, I am the way. So the way, the gate, and the door are all the same thing.
Good.
And there's another place where he says, strive to enter by the narrow door. And so I'm not going to repent for striving. I will just confess to all of you, I am striving, have been striving, and will always strive to enter by the narrow door. And I want to read you some other verses that are pretty interesting. Here's Revelations 3. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I want to read you Luke 13, 24 through 30. That's a little bit more. So let me just read some of these verses to you. Luke 13. Here it is. Strive to enter by the narrow door. For many, I tell you, will seek to enter and will not be able. Will not be able. What? Many will seek to enter but will not be able. Once the head of the house gets up and shuts the door, you begin to stand outside and knock on the door saying, Lord, open to us. Then he will answer and say to you, I do not know where you are from. Then you will begin to say, we ate and drank in your presence, and you taught in our streets. And he will say, I tell you, I do not know where you are from. Depart from me, all you evildoers. Wow, where's this being told? In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. When you see Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, but yourselves being thrown out. And they will come from the east and the west and from the north and the south, that's you and me, and will recline at the table in the kingdom of God. And behold, some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be last. That's not a pleasant thought, is it? So this narrow door in this wide way, It's a great quote, and it's awesome for us to say we understand it and know it, but I just feel when I'm in a verse in the Bible that I really need to make sure that the people who come walking in the door because they know I'm here, man, I become responsible the minute they cross the threshold. That we understand what it's talking about. That was a pretty clear communication, wasn't it?
Yes.
I mean, has there ever been anything more clear? Weeping and gnashing of teeth? Like, what the heck is that? Well, I know weeping. I've done some crying in my day. I've been healed by crying, and I've been healed by laughing. And let me just tell you, I like the laughing better.
Amen.
But I like the healed from crying enough to where I'm open to cry again.
That's right.
Hey, make me cry all day. Hurt my feelings if you have to. Just help me get healed. Help me get it right. Because that way is narrow and few. I got to be one of the few.
Amen. Amen.
I picture Forrest Gump running through the forest. I gotta find Bubba. I'm like him. Just some dummy stumbling through a forest looking for what I gotta find. And I gotta find that narrow door. And I think I have. I think through the grace of God, He's shown it to me. And I think He'll show it to anyone who will listen.
That's right.
I think hopefully I'll end with why it's so important for Him to show you what the narrow door is and how you get there. And why there's so much confusion in the world. I don't think this is confusing at all, do you?
No.
It's far more serious than we've been led to believe. The results and the rewards are far more serious. Why don't we turn to, did I say Revelation 3, 7, and 8? No. Did I say those words yet? Yeah, I kind of jumped out of order there. This is 7 and 8. Is it up there? Yeah. To the angel of the church in Philadelphia write. Now Philadelphia is known to be the church of brotherly love. The city of brotherly love. The word phileo means brotherly love. Love for people that isn't like, let's say, what happens at an altar, at a wedding, the two become one. There's a soul tie created that loving my wife is almost, to not love her would be unnatural, to love her would be natural. I can't really brag about loving my wife because that was placed in me. I would have to, the only thing left is to be criticized for not loving my wife because that's a download. That's a natural thing I'm supposed to do. I almost have to resist it. To say I love my children is not really, why brag about that? That was through DNA. That's a natural thing that hit me like a brick in the delivery room. I didn't even know those children yet, and I loved them. It was the craziest thing I've ever experienced. Phileo is a brotherly love that is a gift that is offered that you can take or not take. And so this church, Phileo, says, he who is holy, who is true, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one opens, says this, I know your deeds. Deeds have something to do with this? I know your deeds. Behold, I have put before you an open door, which no one can shut. Because you have a little power and have kept my word and have not denied my name. Put before you an open door. Now, He's already told us the way to that door is narrow. The door is narrow. Few find it, but I put it before you. Those of you who will choose to love. What did He command us? The only thing He commanded us one thing, to love one another. Not the natural, I love my wife and my children and my mama. No, it's the unnatural. I love people who they're not even lovable and I love them. I do things of love. I have emotion towards others I've chosen to have emotion towards. Laid my life down for neighbors I've never received anything from. And He tells us that over and over. Why? What credit is to you to love those you're supposed to love? Love those you've been programmed to love.
Come on.
No. Count it credit to you if you obey me. You want to love me? Then obey me. And what is obeying Him? Loving. Whoa. The other thing the apostles always count towards the people they're writing letters, they say, I commend you for your faith and your love. For your love for one another and your belief in the one he sent. The open door. If you want to understand the Bible, and I have found it very difficult to find people who understand the Bible. Father's House, I want you to be people who understand how to read the Bible. I'm not saying you have to understand everything. You don't need to know what a scorpion that stings for 7 years is. Who cares? Don't be around to be stung by the scorpion, and you'll never have to know. It'll all become apparent. Enter by the narrow door. Stay on the narrow path. Go after the narrow gate, and you will find it. It says, those who seek, find.
That's right.
Seek first the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God. All these things will be added to you. The narrow gate will be added to you if he is on the throne. If he is your first seeking. Everything, I said this 2 weeks ago about the throne. If you put on your throne anything, for instance, so many of us struggle and fight to keep our children off the throne. Off the top spot. Picture this. If the God is what he says he is a covering for everything that comes up under his wing, then anything that I place before God becomes uncovered. My very children become in danger because of my actions of not placing him first. You follow that? Strive to enter by the narrow door, and you will. Keep him Lord of your life. Keep him number one. Keep service to him number one. Keep worship to him number one. Do you need to know what those things are? Service to him is loving those that can do nothing for you. Service to him is loving those who you aren't programmed to love. Laying your life down for your brother. Service to him is that. Loving him is obeying him. Obeying him is loving.
Good.
Period. What is worship? In my opinion, the most sincerest form of worship is labor.
Good.
I work for Jesus. Now, let me tell you something. I have worked for a buck like a dog. I've never met men to outwork me when I was young. And I worked for money. And I worked for respect. I worked for their honor. I worked to prove myself who I am. I've done all those things. How could I then work less for him, who died on a cross for me, who's offering me eternal life by simply walking through a door? I'm sorry to maybe violate some of your beliefs, but I'm always taught that I'm saved, it's over, I don't need to do nothing. And I'm like, that's not what I'm reading here. How you want to know how to read the Bible? You want to know how to understand the Bible? To get unconfused? Then read Jesus.
Right.
Let him teach you how to understand the rest. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I just read you from a letter in Revelations. There's 7 letters that he's writing to the church. We are the church. Take them as him writing to you. Read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And when you're done with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Don't read my books or anyone else's books until you really have Jesus. So you can read a book filtered through Jesus. If I'm violating the words of Jesus in my books, throw them out the window. Use them to warm your house by burning them in your fireplace.
Right.
Anything not washed through Jesus, you get rid of.
That's right.
When you read the Old Covenant, which is, for those of you that don't know, it's Genesis to Malachi. Read it for one reason and one reason only. You don't need to know what it takes to be a Jew. Read it don't read it for how a Christian should live. Read it to know who God is, what he likes and doesn't like, what he thinks.
That's right.
I mean, this one place where Solomon says over and over, God likes 4 things. No, God likes 5 things. Better yet, it's 6. And he tells you all 6. Read those. He likes that. God despises 3 things. Nope, it's 4. Man, I want to read it.
Right.
I want to know what he likes and doesn't like. Because his new covenant, in some of them, he will withhold his anger on what he doesn't like because he made a covenant with us through Jesus Christ. That's the narrow path. You know that in the Old Testament, he says he'll curse your generations for 10 generations for certain sins. In the New Covenant, he says he will forgive them and remove them as far as the east is from the west. He will put them in the sea of forgetfulness so that he doesn't hold them against your generations. I think you'll find out there's a lot to him. But don't worry about reading the Old Covenant. Read Jesus on how we as Gentile peoples should receive the love of God and respond to it.
Right.
Because I'm telling you, what I just read you about weeping and gnashing of teeth, pounding on the door, and you're not getting in, it's repeated over and over. That's why here at the Father's house, we repeat it over and over. Are you a broken record? Well, I just keep reading what he says, and he's telling you warnings, and he's telling you promises.
Right.
He's warning you, don't do this, do this. And this narrow is the way, and wide is the way, narrow is the door, and wide is the door, narrow is the gate, and wide is the gate. I am the gate. Man, you put all kinds of things up there. All kinds of things. When I was a kid, no public sports program for kids would have ever played on a Sunday. Name one that doesn't now. Because the vast majority of people honored Sunday as their day of worship. And it was important. All societies, all communities, that you leave open the right for families to worship together. Not anymore. Everybody has to decide. When I look at the stakes, I would have been great. I mean, that guy last week says he missed 5 championship games because he had to be in church.
Yep.
They didn't play on Sundays when he was a kid either, but they traveled. And if you travel, you miss church. He missed 5. You know, he said he had a drug problem. He was drugged to church every week. I've heard of people who won't drag their kids to church because of what he said. Let me just tell you something. It worked on him. He loves Jesus because he was drugged to church every week and forced to sit there and listen. And if he didn't listen, what he said was they took him home and he was in trouble. Well, all children when I was young was that way. You didn't listen today? Don't you know this is more important than anything you learn anywhere else?
Right.
So all children had that in their life. I appreciate him say that. I like that he's his energetic, what's that called? Introvert, extrovert personality. Because the way us non-extroverts talk could probably nice to every once in a while throw a really crazy extrovert in there. Probably good, huh? Are you following me? Let me read for you something in Mark chapter 8, verse 34. Mark chapter 8, verse 34. And I'm going to read through verse 38. He summoned the crowd with his disciples. So that includes Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. No, it includes the 12, right? And then anyone else who became his disciple. If anyone, do you understand that includes you when he says anyone?
Yes.
If anyone. So you should all of a sudden get real serious about listening.
Yep.
Like the most important thing in the room right now, when he says if anybody, that you should know he's talking to you. If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Leave any options? You see any wormholes there? Any weasel clauses? Anybody? You see a weasel clause anywhere in that? For whoever, and is that like you too? Is that back to you? Yeah. Are you in that?
Yep.
Wishes, and I have some wishes, to save his life will lose it. I wish to save my life. I don't want to lose it. But whoever, and that's me, loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. So we're all going to lose our life because all of us wish to save our life, so we're all losing it. So I might as well decide, if I'm going to lose it anyway, I might as well lose it for the right reasons so that I get it back.
Good. Yeah.
Did you read that in there?
Yeah.
Did I just make that up?
No.
I mean, isn't that right there? Yeah. Whoever wishes to save his life, now who's that? That should be everybody. Unless you're not listening, I won't have you raise your hands because that'll identify who's not listening. But, because everybody wants to save their life, don't we? I mean, is that a given?
Yes.
So you automatically lose your life. So you're losing your life. But those of you amongst the life losers who are doing it for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of Jesus, for the sake of the gospel, will save it. So all of us who lose our lives, some of us will be able to redeem it and save it if the reason we lose our lives and give it up is for the gospel, for Jesus. For what does it profit a man, verse 36, to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. So, how far can you go with this wide way, this narrow way? How far can you take this? Holy moly. How far do you need to take it? If I were to tell you, everyone that goes out that door will be saved and everyone that goes out that door will be lost, honestly, anyone's going to choose to go out that door? Even if you're still not ready to be saved, you still go out that door. Just to not write in blood the final answer. Not to take away your fallback. Well, even though I didn't go out that door, I'm still going to screw up, but I still have a chance to go through to make it right, as long as I don't go through out the wrong door. And that's what Jesus is saying. Wide is the way. And you can notice that's a double door. It's wide. Easy to get out. Whole crowds could go out that door and not get jammed up. That one back there is a little tougher. It's a single door. Follow me? All right. So how far can you take this wide way and narrow way? Few? It's hard? Is it? If my life is the best it's ever been, and the end result is that I gain my life, and Jesus says these other things, and he says a lot of stuff. They question him. Wait a minute. We gave up house, home, family, gave up life, gave up jobs, gave up town, gave up community to follow you. Who can be saved if we can't? He said, cool your jets. He didn't say that. I said that. He said, calm down. Nobody who even gives a drink of water in my name will fail to receive their reward.
Right.
In the life to come, he'll receive eternal life. In this life, many times more than what he gave. If I were to set a vending machine up here, and it had $100 bills, $1,000 bills, $1 million bills, all in there. It said, for $1 you get $100. For $100 you get $1,000. For the $1,000 you get $1 million. How many of you how long would it take you to figure out, we'll go put the dollar in, put that back in, take that, put that back in, take that, put that back in, take that. Woohoo! What it cost you? The original was the dollar. If it was money related, if it was that easy, wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
Well, my original challenge was to let God change me. I said, no, I can't change. Have you seen the girls at that beach? I'm not changing. Let that one sink in for a minute. I didn't say that. I said, I can't change. I don't have the ability to overcome that. But would you let him change you?
Good.
Okay, I'll put my dollar in.
Good.
Man, my life began to change. Man, he began to do things in me that I thought impossible.
Come on.
What? Seriously. He did things in my life incrementally.
That's right.
But I got 10. I can cash it in. I got 10, man. We'll put the 10 in and see what happens. Okay, let's try that. 1 to 10, we're good. And the 100, 1,000. Oh, my gosh. Can this get... Okay, I'm at the top prize. I got it, baby. He said, well, put it in and see what happens. Okay. You know, how many of you know it's easy to put $1 in when you're asked to put $1 million in? That's why it's almost impossible for a rich man to get to heaven, because pretty soon money is far greater drug than anything you've ever seen.
Right.
It's better than sleep or anything else. Money stuff. But that way is narrow, and that door is narrow, and strive to enter by the narrow door. All that I have is yours. If we can just get that, pretty soon it doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1 million. It's all his. That's the trick. Strive to enter by the narrow door. I am the narrow door. I put before you a door that is open. Will you just come with me? You will not fail to receive your reward.
That's right.
And it's going to be worth way more than anything you ever put in.
Good.
It's just going to get better and better and better.
That's right.
Now the only thing you have to decide is he willing to do that? Is he really going to do that?
Right.
Wait a minute. Does that mean you're asking, is he true? He said he is. If that was all you had was he said he is, it'd be tough. Put your children under him. Put your marriage under him. Put your life under him. Every dollar you've ever been able to accumulate, all your energy, all your time, all your happiness, all your joy. He said he is. Here's what's so important and why we're losing so many people. Because we just leave it up to him to say it is. I got to tell you, I'm not okay with that. And I'm telling you, Father's House, we need to start a campaign where it stops being just him saying it is and it starts to be us. And I'm standing up today to tell you he is true.
That's right.
I'm saying he is.
That's right.
He's shown it to me, my life's best it's ever been, and that's since last week.
That's right.
And next week, I promise you, it's going to be better. My life just continues to be awesome. And I'm telling you, he's true.
Amen. That's right.
You can believe me. Look at my life. I'm inviting you, look at my life. I'm inviting you to examine, see if I'm true. See if I am better. My life is better. Then I'm asking you to stand up and tell somebody he's true. How about we had a cloud of witnesses saying, you can count on him. It's not just him saying this. First it was just him. But then I went and met all these people and they all said, dude, it's true. What I want to ask you to do is don't lie. Don't hype. Don't try to make him look better than you think he is.
That's right.
Don't try to make him look better than your experience. Share only your experience with him being true.
Come on.
Do you understand what I'm telling you?
Yes.
You don't say it's healed if it's not healed. You don't say if it's fixed if it's not fixed. You don't say he came through if he didn't come through. I'm telling you, later on down the road, you're going to be able to, because you can see his hand on the way. He said it, but right now, with the level of faith that you have, you say what it is. I'm better than I was. It's further up and farther in. I know more than I knew. He said, I'm happier than I was. So far, he's proven perfectly true. Little by little, line upon line, precept upon precept, page by page, he's proven himself to me.
Good.
I'm going well. Everywhere in my life I've trusted him, it's come through. Everywhere in my life I haven't, screwed it up. I'm telling you, I've got a huge cloud of witnesses where I've screwed it up and where he's come through. And I'm telling you, trust him, he's good. Start to speak it. Find ways to say it. Show it. Live it. Love it.
Come on.
The world would be saved if we just do this. If all it is him saying, I am the narrow door, come through me, and you say, well, one day I'll find that out. What he described is for some it was too late. He said, don't wait. You know, that's what that story's about. Don't wait.
That's right.
Because you'll find yourself on the outside with him saying, depart from me. Isn't that what he said?
Yep.
Isn't it?
Yep.
testify. If you don't need to be saved, if you don't need another proof that he's real, then go out and tell him he's real.
That's right.
Put the next denomination in the vending machine. See the next level of prize given to you. See the reward for the cup of water, then see the reward for the cup of gold. See the reward for the minute given, then see the reward for the life given. Work your way in. Nobody's asking you for blind faith. Walk with him. Talk with him. Laugh with him and cry with him. Live a life of worship. Give your labor. The other worship is righteousness. Give your righteousness. The other worship is words. Speak your words. Sing your words. Lift your hands. Surrender your life. Little by little. You don't have to be where I am today. You just got to be different than you are today. Little by little, let's go together. Let us go together, further up, farther in. Further up, farther in. Let's just take it step by step. Let's go together, though. So in case you start to get lost, I can say, hey, dude, adjust it. Let's go. Come on, no rest for the weary. Let's go. Let's give him more and see what else I love what Thomas says. They said, if you go to Jerusalem, you'll die. He says, I'm going to Jerusalem. Thomas looked at the disciples, looked at Jesus, and said, let's go with him. And what he really said was, let's go die with him. Let's just go find out let's finish the race. And Thomas had an incredibly fruitful life. Amen.